He walked in wearing a hoodie. No flashy watch, no bodyguards. Just calm confidence. The waiter took one look at him, and made the biggest mistake of his life. What he didn't know. The man he just insulted was worth over $400 million, and owned the restaurant he was standing in. The air inside the restaurant was warm, filled with the comforting aroma of grilled steak, buttery rolls, and sizzling shrimp. It was a busy Friday night, waiters rushing between tables, couples laughing over wine, and families snapping photos of desserts larger than their kids' heads. Then the door opened, and everything shifted. In walked a giant of a man. No dramatic entrance, no announcement. Just a quiet, steady walk like he belonged there. But to the young waiter standing near the bar, he was just another customer. In fact, not just any customer, an underdressed one. Hoodie. Sneakers. No reservations. And that's when it happened. "Excuse me, sir," the waiter called out, stepping into his path. His voice cut through the background chatter. "You can't just walk in here and take a booth. We're fully booked tonight." The man didn't say a word. He just looked at him. There was something behind those eyes, not anger, but the kind of patience that came from years of being underestimated. And in that silence, everyone near them stopped to look. Conversations froze. Forks hovered mid-air. You could practically hear the TikTok videos being recorded in real time. The tall man smiled politely and nodded toward the back of the room. "I'll be sitting there," he said, his voice deep but calm. "That section's reserved," the waiter snapped. "It's for VIPs. Regulars. Paying customers who actually respect the dress code." The man raised an eyebrow but kept walking. That's when the waiter stepped in front of him, blocking the path. "I said you can't sit there. Who do you think you are? Some kind of celebrity or something?" It was like poking a sleeping lion. Now, anyone watching from the side could tell exactly who this man was. Not because of the way he dressed, but because of how the room shifted around him. That was Shaquille O'Neal, NBA legend, business mogul, and known philanthropist. He wasn't just famous, he was a giant in every sense of the word, both physically and financially. But the waiter? He didn't have a clue. Maybe he didn't watch basketball. Maybe he was too young. Maybe he was too busy trying to act like he owned the place, to notice that the man he was insulting literally did. Shaq chuckled under his breath and gently moved around the waiter. "Look, I'm just here for dinner. Same booth as always." This wasn't the first time Shaq had been here. He'd been quietly supporting this restaurant for years. Not just by eating here, but by owning it. And he'd made one very specific rule: don't tell people I'm the owner. I want to be treated like everyone else. But tonight, that rule was about to get broken. As Shaq walked to his booth, the room buzzed with whispers. Customers pulled out their phones. One kid whispered, "Mom, that's Shaq. That's the guy from TV." The mother nodded, eyes wide. "That's the guy who gives out tips bigger than rent." But Dylan, the young waiter, remained oblivious. He stormed after him. "You can't just take that seat," he barked again, louder now, clearly trying to impress nearby guests. "Look man, if you don't leave, I'm calling the manager. People like you think you can just take whatever you want. Not here. People like you." The phrase hung in the air like smoke after a firework. Shaq slowly turned around and looked him in the eye. Still calm. Still smiling. "No need to call the manager," he said. He reached into his pocket, pulled out his phone, and made a single call. "Hey," he said. "Come out front. We've got a little situation." The waiter crossed his arms and huffed. "You'll be leaving in a minute," he muttered under his breath. But it wasn't Shaq who would be leaving. Before the chaos of that night, the restaurant had been running smoothly for months. Customers returned for the cozy atmosphere, the legendary grilled ribs, and unknown to most, the hidden support of one of the most famous athletes alive, Shaquille O'Neal. The restaurant had character. The walls were decorated with retro sports memorabilia and vintage movie posters. It wasn't a five-star spot, but it had soul, the kind of place that made people feel at home. Then came Dylan. Dylan was 22, fresh out of community college, with a resume that looked more like a list of short-term gigs. Coffee shop. Retail. 1-week stint at a hotel. He wasn't exactly experienced, but he was overconfident. From his first day, Dylan came in like he was auditioning for a reality show. He walked with a bounce, constantly checked his reflection in the kitchen window, and made it very clear to the rest of the staff that he was not just here to serve fries. He wanted to move up fast. Fast track to management. Get noticed. He even said, out loud, "This place needs someone with a real personality." That personality, however, quickly rubbed people the wrong way. He flirted with customers a little too aggressively. Rolled his eyes when someone asked for extra ketchup. Loudly commented on people's outfits when he thought they couldn't hear. And worst of all? He constantly judged guests based on appearance. "He looks broke, probably won't tip," he muttered once after a dad in work boots sat down. "Wow, sweatpants on a Friday night? Classy," he joked to a coworker. The staff wasn't impressed. One of the veteran servers, Rosa, pulled him aside after the second day. "You've got to chill," she said. "This place gets regulars. Real people. Some of them are big names, and some just don't like being treated like trash." But Dylan just laughed. If they're rich, they should dress rich. Simple. He wasn't evil. Just arrogant. Naive. A young man chasing status without realizing he was burning bridges in every direction. The manager gave him a formal warning after a customer complaint. "You're not here to judge people," he said. "You're here to serve food and make people feel welcome. This is a family-run business. We take that seriously." But Dylan scoffed. "I'm the best server you've got. Let's be real." Then came the conversation that sealed his fate. A few days before the Shaq incident, the assistant manager, who knew the truth about the restaurant's ownership, tried to drop a gentle hint. "You never know who you're serving," she said, handing Dylan a tray. "Sometimes the most important person in the room doesn't look it. Just keep that in mind." Dylan rolled his eyes. If someone was important, they wouldn't be eating in a place like this. And just like that, the perfect storm was brewing. Because soon, Dylan would come face to face with someone who didn't need flashy clothes or a Rolex to command a room. Someone who had quietly poured millions into businesses just like this one. Someone who bought this restaurant, not for show, but to give back. Shaquille O'Neal. The owner Dylan didn't know he was disrespecting, until it was too late. Shaquille O'Neal had a rule: don't make a scene. Make a difference. It was a mantra he lived by, especially after his basketball career. He wasn't chasing the spotlight anymore. He was chasing impact. That's why he invested in things most celebrities ignored, like small businesses in working-class neighborhoods. Gyms. Car washes. Burger joints. And yes, this little soul food restaurant tucked between a laundromat and a gas station. He bought it anonymously, through a shell company, but stayed involved. He'd stop by unannounced, eat in the corner booth, tip outrageously, and observe the staff from behind the scenes. He wanted to see how people acted when they didn't know they were being watched. So when Shaq walked in that Friday night, it wasn't a grand entrance. No camera crew. No entourage. Just a tall man in a hoodie, craving ribs. But to Dylan, who was covering the floor solo that evening, it looked like some guy trying to act important. He didn't recognize the face. He didn't see the greatness in front of him. And that's when the friction began. Shaq nodded politely to a family sitting by the door. They recognized him instantly but said nothing. He gave a high five to a kid who whispered, "Are you the guy from those commercials?" "Could be," Shaq smiled. He made his way to the usual booth, third from the back wall, next to the poster of Muhammad Ali. Dylan was already charging across the floor. No, 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 you can't just walk back here like you own the place, he barked. I've always sat here, Shaq replied calmly. I'll just have the usual. Who even are you? Dylan snapped. You think just because you're big, you get to do what you want? A hush fell over the restaurant. Rosa froze mid-order. The cook peeked from the kitchen. Shaq didn't raise his voice. He simply said, "You really want to do this right now?" Dylan rolled his eyes. Look, man. You can either get in line or get out. That's when Shaq pulled out his phone and made the call. Let's get the manager out here, he said. The room waited, breathless. When the manager came out eyes wide with panic, he immediately extended a hand. Mr. O'Neill, I am so sorry. We'll handle this. Dylan's face twisted in confusion. Wait. Mr. O'Neill? Like Shaq? The Shaq? Shaq turned and smiled. You guessed it. The moment Dylan heard the name Shaq, his jaw almost hit the floor. The room felt like it had stopped breathing. Plates paused midair, forks clinked awkwardly against plates, and even the sizzle from the kitchen seemed to die down. The quiet tension was louder than any argument. Wait, Shaq? Like Shaquille O'Neal Shaq? Dylan stuttered, stepping backward as if realizing he had just poked a sleeping bear. Shaq smiled again, calm, composed, powerful. Yeah. That's Shaq. The manager was already at Dylan's side, practically dragging him back. Go to the kitchen. Now. Dylan, still dazed, muttered something like "I didn't know," as he disappeared behind the swinging double doors. Shaq, ever the professional, didn't yell. Didn't ask for Dylan to be fired on the spot. That wasn't his style. He simply sat down in his booth and looked up at the manager. I came here for dinner. That's still okay, right? The manager, now sweating bullets, nodded frantically. Of course, sir. Please, anything you want. Soon, Rosa was at the table, serving him with the warmth and professionalism he was used to. Welcome back, Mr. O'Neill, she said quietly. Shaq gave her a wink. Good to see you again, Rosa. Back in the kitchen, Dylan was pacing like a man who just found out he'd been insulting royalty. His mind replayed the words over and over. Who do you think you are? People like you. You can't just sit there. He was humiliated. But not just because he got caught. Because deep down, he realized the ugly truth. He judged a man by what he was wearing, not who he was. And that wasn't just a mistake. It was a wake-up call. 10 minutes later, the manager called him back out. Shaq wants to speak with you, he said grimly. Dylan swallowed hard and walked slowly across the dining area, his head low, avoiding every customer's glare. When he reached the table, Shaq didn't look angry. Disappointed? Maybe. But not vengeful. Dylan opened his mouth to apologize, but Shaq raised a hand. You know, he said, when I was your age, people judged me too. Thought I was dumb because I was big. Poor because of how I dressed. People used to laugh when I said I wanted to own businesses. Said, just stick to basketball. Dylan looked up. Shaq leaned forward. I bought this place because I believe in giving people second chances. Especially young people. You messed up tonight, no doubt. But I'm not here to ruin your life. Dylan was silent. Shaq continued, you can learn something from this, or you can pretend it didn't happen. Up to you. But if you ever want to grow in life, the first step is treating everyone with respect, no matter what they look like. And just like that, Shaq picked up his fork and started eating. The conversation was over. But the lesson? It would last Dylan a lifetime. In the weeks that followed, things around the restaurant changed, starting with Dylan. He didn't quit. He didn't get fired. Shaq hadn't asked for that, and the manager respected his decision. Instead, Dylan came back the next shift, different. He started showing up early. helped clean even when it wasn't his turn. Started listening instead of talking. When customers walked in wearing worn-out jackets or old sneakers, he greeted them with a smile instead of judgment. The other staff noticed the shift immediately. "He's not being fake," Rosa whispered to a cook one night. "I think the kid actually learned." In a rare moment of vulnerability, Dylan admitted to the team, "I was chasing the wrong kind of success. Trying to act like I mattered instead of actually making people feel like they did." He started studying customer service. Read up on hospitality. Even apologized individually to regulars he'd been rude to. Then, a month later, Shaq came back. Same hoodie. Same booth. But this time, when he walked in, Dylan was the first one to greet him, professionally. "Welcome back, sir," he said, respectfully. "It's good to see you again." Shaq chuckled. "Sir now, huh?" Dylan smiled. "Always was. I just didn't know it yet." That night, the two had a long conversation after closing. Shaq shared stories. Not about basketball, but about business. Investments. Learning from failure. And more importantly, about using success to lift others up. "You know why I own places like this?" Shaq asked. "Because I remember what it was like to be ignored. To be told I didn't belong." He paused, then looked Dylan in the eye. "Now, I walk in places like this, to remind people that everyone belongs, no matter how they dress." By the end of that night, Dylan asked something bold. "Can I shadow you sometime? Learn about this business from the ground up?" Shaq didn't answer immediately. But the smile that slowly spread across his face was all Dylan needed. "Let's see what you've got," he said. And just like that, a new chapter had started. For Dylan, for the restaurant, and for every person who walked in that door afterward. Because respect has no dress code. So, what did we just witness? A young waiter who judged a man based on a hoodie and sneakers. A billionaire legend who could have crushed his career in seconds but chose to educate instead of humiliate. And a powerful reminder that true wealth doesn't flaunt, it walks in quietly, does the right thing, and leaves a legacy. We live in a world where people are quick to judge based on clothes, job titles, Instagram followers. But sometimes, the most important people in the room are the ones saying the least. Shaquille O'Neal could have flexed his money, his fame, his power. Instead, he offered grace. He taught a lesson. He changed someone's life. And now, maybe this story changed something in you, too. So the next time you're tempted to look down on someone because they don't look important, remember this. Respect isn't earned through appearances. It's earned through character. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this story, hit that like button, subscribe for more real-life stories that hit different, and let us know in the comments. What would you have done if you were in Dylan's shoes? Till next time. Stay humble. Stay kind. Stay real.